Hello, species value nature system. This is an emergency broadcast. I'm not a lawyer. There are 5 identities of hyperpossession, which is distinct from possession, though. As each verb. For example, this is why there are five names for the verb, also 3 ways, simultaneously, distinctly, as in 5 identities, distinct identities of the same value progression, value/value progression, 1/3/5 ways. Also grouped, how they are grouped. This is also relative, hyper-additionally, how we are grouped. As individual, as group different /s per the hyper-simultaneous. And species volume /s. See, we have the identity of relativity /hyper-relativity right here to discern. The relativity theorem is simply that how the other species bodies have 2 eyes. They have the same quality aspects of nature. In other words, they have that we didn't invent and they didn't invent. Manifest. And when we describe this, it shows its distinct, non-distinct, and hyper-simultaneous identity relationship to itself as a better than perfect system, only increasing. All exceptions in exception nature. For example, as lethal of Hadith, force space nature transfer is more probably what the ancients, and is demonstrably what the ancients taught rather than descriptions of lethal ideas. Because the sciences have been only known abridged since semi-ancient times. And the significance of that and the uses of it, the use singular /s of it has been left out. Even though where the religions, for example, where they deal with science, that is force not allowed to be. But meanwhile, we have at the sciences campuses manifest, descriptions of other. We have descriptions and we have differences between such as subject treatments that left out and were measured leaving out. How there are 1/3 identities of hyperpossession, distinct identities of the same hyperpossession as the same identity of value/value progression, that is the value of the subject. If you take all the subjects together that you could perceive, there's also more things coming into temporary lasting existence. So nature shows us where and how it is making more and more of a distinct identity of forever nature through temporary lasting space nature, and English was revealed to teach this. All parts of English grammar, all parts of English, finite, grouped, and together distinctly too. This is the same way and reason why and how the notes of music are bound individually, grouped, and together. Relativity /hyper-relativity to their shared identity of value/value progression, which is a description which is science simultaneously greater than and more finite than math while it is as math. For example, reason is capable of using, and does, whether people agree to it or not, it uses difference in ways simultaneously greater than, more finite than, and with how relativity /hyper-relativity to where and to how things are actually active. So there are 5 names for the verb, which are also 3 ways bound. So reason also uses how the languages were about how it is functional, being how there is a hyper invisible, there is a distinct identity of hyper invisible but still discernible. That is again why and how there are 5 names for the verb that are simultaneously 3 ways bound too. So there's the name for the verb as the verb. There is a name for it as a participle nature. It could be a present participle or it could be a past participle. I'm referring to it as a participle nature because this is the way it is more proper to speak it per the rules of English as read from the nature of English itself. For the same reason, I'm using the word nature for the scientific identity of value as the name of English. Part of its nature, part of its identity, we can't discern. So, but we can't unless we discern its relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. But again, it is positive. It is relativity to positive and negative 5 ways simultaneously, and or that is what is nature shows us is the difference between criminal insidiousness, nature of positive treatment, and one that is just positive. But this is per nature's means to demonstrate such to us. So we know that the laws that were in place before each modern country's founders were born, they had already forced, tricked, and persuaded the names of the semi-ancients individually grouped and all voicings for humanity to entertain without realizing while defending themselves and reacting and or not reacting to things like criminal foreign influences and criminal insidiousness that were engineered specifically to force, trick, hurt, persuade people to blame other things, others, or ourselves, and to defend that, simultaneously not realizing they were defending more and more uses of the name, the identities of the sciences that share an identity. This one that is 5 distinctive hyperpossessions over the identity of the verb. And part of its identity, part of this science that is simultaneous / hyper simultaneous. In other words, so there's a participle, we have to appreciate the word nature as relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. The same way in reason, distinctly but also non-distinctly and simultaneously, hyper / hyper simultaneously. In other words, there are 2 participle natures that are constantly participle nature now. And there is a gerund. And when you read definitions of what a present participle is, they always write the present participle is always formed by adding ing to a verb. So there's about what's constant, but also a past participle could be could be a verb formed by an ing, but also could be ed. See, the point is now it is no longer a predicate, which is another name for the verb, but it's not one of the participle natures. But the gerund is. A gerund is another name for a verb. And a gerund is a verb formed by an ing. So we don't just refer to it exclusively, again, as a present participle or as a past participle. But it constantly, the present participle is always formed with ing. Apparently, there is no other way to form a present participle. And if there is, we could observe the English, how it is, its identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that. We could use this to answer that question, because those three ways it is bound are the same three ways. In other words, even cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall /S. It is easier to discern the cell nucleus as how there is a little bit of difference. In other words, there is not a clear pattern. While there is simultaneously a clear pattern, if you observe a cell body through a microscope of a plant cell, for example, you're going to see a cell body, but there's little differences in it, and they refer to this as the cell nucleus and the cell wall. But see, the ancients revealed, there were proofs that the ancients had microscopes and that they had telescopes. But see, once they forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded enough of the countries, individually grouped and together, to, even though through defenses of themselves and other, without realizing simultaneously uses of the science's names, abridged, apart from appreciation of how it is functional, how nature communicates, being the only identity of volume that is hyper simultaneous but still discernible. Again, we like our species and other species, and well, no, we have the same color eyes as our own as our own species. My tooth is about to fall out. These people at Hartford Hospital, a whole bunch of people have been planting evidences on people's house streets through time. They attached me to fake uses of drug, fake locations. You know what they did too? They put these are why people online they get involved. I've caught them with a principal child abuser and with retired police chiefs with their families and intimate ties, and people associated with them planting evidences with their kids, also with courts families. Forgiveness is because also this is all they have been capable of. In other words, since they were kids, they were abused. The short words and the subject treatments of Americans and of people in countries A through Z, they were used effectively by a breaching method through our own to measure and maintain. Collusions with criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and or negative treatments with subject treatments. So there are the three ways. The participles are about this. Identity of forever nature. And then there's the predicate and the verb. So those are 5 names, 5 distinct identities of hyperpossession by the same identity of value/value progression that we discern 3 ways. For example, manifest with the simultaneous, because we are inside of its complete identity. Just as parts of our body are inside of our complete identities. Identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that. As a semi-nature identity of relationship to metaphysics. For example, that stays value greater than and more finite than, well, as the value of physics. And while too, differentially, all exceptions in exception nature are that appear to be in demonstration of the same thing, are in demonstration of the same thing, except, and where they appear not to be, it's because what makes it seem that way is because identity's volume science is also there. And thus is also an only increasing identity of value slash value progression, because it's to an extent it is its identity of value progression. We didn't invent how the other species have two eyes, exceptions, exception nature, that show us how nature uses exceptions in exception nature ways hyper additionally from how we could reveal or make up. It's an inseparable. It's three ways inseparable identity of value slash value regression 1/3/5 from each finite detail of anything that could be revealed or made up. So there is the where and how it is a conflagration, and where and how it is a war, as being described through the news media and through social media. Like, for example, the YouTube page Judging Freedom by Judge Napolitano. He has intelligence community sources on there, like a Colonel McGregor and like a Scott Ritter. And now these are experts. There are types of experts A through Z that are relied upon. And this by this breaching method in countries A through Z, suits and ties, counters to them, and exceptions in exception nature, effectively used by a semi-ancient breaching method to measure and maintain subject treatments and or predicate treatments and or predicate act treatments, leaving out the predicate acts with facts method and the relativity of it with every subject treatment. So this method used as an identity of volume as criminal insidiousness, nature, positive treatments and or negative treatments. And because of constantly better than perfectly unchallenged use /s of every formal voicing for the law and or for names, and or that body was sensed and worse than hurt and or pseudo helped, or not pseudo, and or helped only in the furtherance of that collusion /s, which is actually recorded. The hyper-evidentially, the short words are being and have been replaced at each age of correlation age. Our founders communicated for us to explain how the descriptions of them in databases, the descriptions of their roles with slavery that had been sickly entrenched before they were born, north and south, how that was faked, how the breaching method had employed everyone to measure and maintain for itself, which used also the countries grouped. See, the voicings that develop any grouping of humanity. I'm not going to name one, because then that's why I'm defending my anti-identity. We try hard. You guys are child abuse, though. See, forgiveness is relative to where and how we're supposed to speak about the law when we speak about religion. We're supposed to not leave out how the sciences became abridged and how there was uses of that where and how it is manifest, not just with our sequence treatments, not just with our identity treatments, but with our relativity to positive and negative treatments, not just per value. Note how value has relativity positive and negative simultaneously, the same distinctly from, but also non-distinctly from how identity does. That's because there's the difference. One of the differences is the hyper simultaneous, hyper invisible, but still discernible identity of conjunction to the subject and the verb as them, but distinctly itself, as itself. The identity of the hyper-simultaneous answers our questions. It answered the questions of the ancients before the sciences became forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded. Identities of names simultaneously, while the names of locations, areas, and states. And therefore, more and more, no matter how powerful any individual voice could get, they're forced to entertain, or having had entertained all locations, areas, and states voicings, not just as the jobs and things like, in other words, their industries, the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, countries shared, individually grouped and together. Again, that was also used where and how use of name /s can't be defending ourselves at the same time. That was hyper-employed by nature itself. So we could use as the hyper-evidential where and how, now we have means to transverse the earth. We still in suburbs tactically denatured since before our founders were born to cause negative value to each progressions, acts, natures, and tortures and extortion of themselves. And in fact, cheaping nature slavery we were supposed to address, sickly distinctly against everyone to effectively measure and maintain how sickly non-distinctly left out with subject treatments now. Each subject is three ways bound again, / there are more coming in. Has relativity increasingly the value of the discernment between the simultaneous / hyper-simultaneous. In other words, how correlation works. So Russia, Ukraine, and America, and our militaries, they have been planting evidences together, fake motivations together. Forgiveness is because all our countries individually grouped and together have been. On-off shipping locations, on-off campuses. And they speak for culture. Black pupils. Here! In other words, black pupils, we whites of eyes, we know. In other words, so there's problems with aggression. The sources of Judge Napolitano on Fox Connecticut News, intelligent families, like one's named Mendez. They have roles planting evidences with Wethersfield police and with people associated with FBI and federal criminal code defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and their lawyer, Robert Chevrolet, and names and uses of locations next to his office, which is also next to the state capital of Connecticut. Also, a whole bunch of people with the foreign and domestic military, with medical corruptions, all kinds of delusions with the logic experts. We're going to address this. They had worse that seemed less with Josef Mengele of Germany and with his victims at the same time used remotely here and there, increasingly roles with World Trade Center predicate acts, attacks with them since, predicate acts since, and with courts. They have been pretending not to realize, and they've been pretending motivations when people are brought before them per the extent of the collusions between distinct identities of criminal insidiousness nature. We're also employed by the breaching method as uses of the differences of that. So there are a certain type of victim / hyper victim that the people of the news agencies are, where and how this breaching method employed. This defenses of values like voting, like locations, the names of the locations where the voting machines are, the names next to them. This breaching method employed crime methods roles predicate acts with facts, roles, and natures. For example, use the crime methods. He's saying something bad about the police. Forget that. They're forcing a quality of fact to be nature. That's criminal insidiousness. They're forcing that exceptions and exception nature are as they are really would have been brought before the courts from being discerned. See, and the breaching method knew the breaching method was hyper sophistication with readings of the law. So, in other words, before our founders were born, this breaching method knew that they would counter things like criminal enterprises as collusions with themselves valued simultaneously. Now, this is now part of the way we could discern a criminal enterprise as a criminal insidiousness nature is for how they have by nature itself. This is again the difference between them and this breaching method employs roles with all sides in criminal and in civil cases, victims, the victims' advocates, and all the names involved with the recording of the instances, and the interbranch family members. Overt criminal enterprises at the same time, private ones, their family members, roles next to corners of streets that people walk by and drive by when things are brought up. All this stuff is manifest where and how there are foreign bodies involved that are being and having been used when to hurt others, also to hurt themselves. So when there are syntactical responses to it and or non-responses to it, the breaching method could use that to discern where and how it has roles with the programming of the human value/value progression system /S and database relativity. Since before computers were a part of the equation with the databases and with the uses of our names and our identity of value/value progression. A whole bunch of people with the digital policing community, they have roles with drugs and medicines crimes with the names at locations that are the only means to counter such. As roles with the names interbranch, putting fake things in databases with the worst patients and criminals since before they were caught, planting fake motivations relative to where and to how they're being used remotely, relative to how they already were, and the difference of how it was at the interbranch locations already, and or at the crime scenes, and or next to them, the names next to them, names next to body dumping spots, involved with names that were predicate acts methods at those locations. And as the courts involved with the prosecution and conviction of a serial killer, who's also rolls with a whole bunch of other countries like German police and Kuwaiti police and military families, like generals, their extended families. The difference of that, they have roles with Central Connecticut State University and Tunxis Community College, professionals and students through time, and a dean and deans involved also with whiting forensics names and investigators associated with WTNH, Fox Connecticut News, and WFSB also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they're being coached to further and cover up wire crime methods also with their phones, tied to them also planting evidences on and off crime scenes like principal child abusers campus and the corners next to it, with names also involved with predicate acts of various natures, criminally foreign influence uses of the military and people intermilitary, with people associated with predicate acts with facts, identity thefts and frauds, and wire crime methods, and uses roles with uses of the difference of who's responsible for what we're relative. People are using our names. They're making fake exceptions of us knowing people that we don't know at all. And these are also people with the mayors and judges and the police forms, and the difference between that as the names timed roles with overt criminal enterprises and the private ones. Clearer than day, our founders left us to demonstrate how the difference between the private industry's roles with the torture and extortion and the slavery of the people, let alone of our founders, let alone of the difference of that. Because that too is employed by the breaching method, left out by identities of experts. So the beginning of the Old Testament, after the part where the Old Testament says this is the only part that identities of the experts of the sciences will come together to defend. In other words, I'm paraphrasing. People don't even know about that part. It says that the people of the sciences will come together. It's because the sciences share an identity where they appear not to, is where and how simultaneously nature shows how it uses exceptions and exception nature the same way we do, but simultaneously further ways, more finite, greater than, and relativity to the active portion. We are. We only have control over the middle of our sentences to an extent until they are complete. Vaccines. So then we have the predicate, the main verb. See, once a verb is if a verb is being used as a participle nature, it cannot be used as a main verb. An infinitive, note how infinite is the finite. Is the root of the word. Infinitive, where one puts with the preposition, the word to before a verb. This also comes with exceptions and exception nature. They need to be appreciated with sanity and honesty, simultaneously left out as well with the hyper-evidential. So Wethersfield police have wire crime acts and methods with the FBI and with state police and with names at Whiting with forensics and with judges and with prosecutors through time. It's also neighbors of and names associated with locations next to mayors because of their roles with the and other natures of politicians because of how the intelligence community is manifest, where it can be measured use/s of words like intelligence as criminal insidiousness natures, and or that body would be sensed, including how our nations are grouped, no matter how powerful they become as a group of nations. If ever all the nuclear nations right now, in other words, rather than use that phenomenon to say, look, fake sciences, we can't handle it anymore. We have to stop wars. We don't have not just to stop wars. Why are we're self-valuing roles with identities of negative value nature progressions, acts and natures, and or with the exceptions. Well, I'm admitting this is because I want some money from this war or whatever like that. Those exceptions that you're in demonstration, same thing too. You really look, they're needing to hide what we actually came first. So there are people with the name Violet on off UConn and on off Trinity College with the Connecticut military and other agencies that are involved with Wethersfield police and other countries through administrations and through wars, where they have, for example, where they have experts on women, experts on men, where they have people speaking for identity or culture, certain type of victim/hyper victim, leaving out the breaching method, and what our founders left to demonstrate about the torturers' extortion of themselves. We're supposed to deal with this honestly, which brings up how they were sickly, non-distinctly enslaved, and also how the relativity, the only increasing value of how of discernments, of revelations that come from understanding how and why they were even capable of, or countering the other founders, forcing them to rely on our founders. Because once people went against those laws syntactically, laws that were designed to torture, extort, and enslave and further the factum nature and slavery of every name and every hypernative thing about every spot around everyone. Even though that would and does, nature shows, cause lethal hadith for space nature transfer, which is not just Earth's difference, not just our difference, but also the slash between it as an identity of relationship to itself, where it's an only increasing volume, where how its identity of relativity to positive and negative simultaneously as the identities, as all identities are, because we are an extent of itself. It is making more positive here, or it is forced from here as a negative identity of relationship to itself, leads of ID. So we could stay, even if all the countries agreed at once together to stay systems tactically ulterior from the one that is hypernative pure and its positive relationship to itself, method by itself. Again, to answer our questions, what were the laws regarding black and white about? One thing we know true always, they were about to replace what nature communicated for us to understand and to observe and to appreciate regarding its answers. So we have those answers replaced by tactical delusions. And these are with the experts on identities of logic and on things like delusions, who are criminally foreign delusions wrought. Then they want to defend themselves. So in other words, they're a phenomenon manifest, where how the value of sequence truth with how we were supposed to be programmed as science to receive writing. For example, the beginning of the Old Testament, people don't even know what it says. It says this is the only part that matters, but no one knows about it. And where and how that is justifiable, and there's reasons for that are legitimate. Those are truths used for lies. That's also hyper-evidentially recorded. Also, the differences between the religions and their motivations, narratives, and natures regarding uses of people's names or not. See, right on social media, there are recorded self-value conscious roles of the identities of types of religions, where and how the Constitution says that individuals are supposed to have religious rights. See, there are people attaching us to fake conversations about religions, which is one of the many things they're doing each year of our lives, where and how they're putting fake things in databases. There are only 3 branches of government and exceptions tied to them. The difference between that, this preaching method knew they would self-value. It means when it shows them it needs to use things like states' rights to lie, to hide state secrets, originally still used where they don't have the right to lie, including there was a guy named reportedly named James Comey, who's one of the people where the Congress is used and has been used remotely, individually grouped and together, leading up to the World Trade Center attack and since, leading up to the January 6th. Uses of it and since, including by the courts, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. So they switched names and forged names, and they prevented what is actually hyper-evidentially from being revealed. So interstates individually grouped and together. There are also groupings, like Florida has roles and New York has roles with Connecticut grouped. with names like DeMorrow and Scalora, who are involved with names of Wethersfield police who wire crimes and drugs and medicines crimes with little kids. Also, between each age of campus, putting fake things in databases, attaching kids and their families to fake use of drugs, fake locations, fake ties to other people. All exception nature and demonstration is the same thing. There are proofs that one of the reasons, the only reason they didn't care about the freedom of people when they made the syntax to make marijuana legal, because they use the qualities of pot and their rules with such to plant evidences and fake motivations with the families that are at the interbranch locations and at medical locations and fire campuses and regular campuses that are having put fake things in there, where there's a quality of fact treatment nature where they need to get on writing, but they're not doing it. They pretend not to understand us when we use clear words. So I asked many times for Judge Napolitano to get the three branches of government to one name and sequence onto paper. And I want a response for the principal child abuser's confessions. If they want, in other words, and the news plan to attach me to fake locations words with themselves. And they are tactical delusions raw too. And they are roles also with wire crime, predicate acts methods with their phones too. And with names next to the location. And the difference between that and the retired and standing interbranch roles with them, planting evidences. At crime scenes with the news, planting evidences, even preemptively. How that is all manifest is where and how they have roles with uses of location, intercities, town lines, spots associated with the unions, like in Wethersfield Avenue, off of near the highways there. People on and off the UPS, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. I went there from before I went there to just get a temporary employment. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed to have roles with the names involved with foreign and domestic military, roles with on-off Connecticut State Judicial Branch offices, on-off the state corrections offices, the same names that have been planting predicate acts and roles with them on campuses. Criminally foreign influence convert uses of other students' names with their roles with teachers, professionally and other. The intelligence community is criminally foreign influence with our kids. I don't have any kids. Part of the reason I have no kids is because these people, since before the World Trade Center attack, every year since too. See, I knew that they were involved, and I asked I recorded it. You can't record the police in the courts, but they affected confessions and requests for help to me from others. So I don't know the names of them, even all. But these are people involved with deans, their family members, their friends, their family members. More with the principal child abusers campus in Wethersfield and other campuses in Wethersfield and names next to the campuses. Further involved planting roles of predicate acts, fake ties, fake natures of ties to kids from other classrooms, and then uses of that. Also functionally where and how they pretend motivations while they're pretending passions and emotions. As one of the things that is manifested where it is sickly distinctly against everyone, every name, everywhere the species body stands, where it is sickly non-distinctly, sickly distinctly we know unequally that breaching method employed it that way, so it could measure and maintain treatments of that, leaving out what's actually recorded as role and or as roles. See the sense and sensibilities of everyone, using Jane Austen's phrase. They require mandated law to be followed. Central Connecticut State University recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, has roles with people from Wethersfield interbranch and tied to them. And like exceptions like private and retired and standing interbranch, military, Sandy Hook campuses, fire campus. There's a prison campus there. We know there's the Sandy Hook campus. All sides in criminal and civil cases regarding that, victims, their victims advocates, and the courts regarding see what people say outside, and the Alec Jones too. Though, if you ask them to follow mandated law, because you have actual acts to report, these are roles, needs, and natures that are preventing people from reporting things because the campuses are being used to stack fake things from off campuses influences. But that has never stopped. And it was designed to make additional motivations, natures, needs, interests, apparent motivation. Has something to do with Central Connecticut State University in New Britain. Is increasingly, since I was a kid, planting evidences on off campuses, intercities. So an O'Brien family and a Collo family are one of the ones involved with Wethersfield Police and Hartford Police and Newington Police families. Further with the child abusers and with wire crimes, fake conversations between kids and police. And now, as an adult, fake conversations with me, fake ties to me, and these Mendez police, for example, fake transcripts with them. A Leahy family too, as doctors, we have ones with police forms, foreign and domestic military, Hartford Hospital has roles leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since, including with victims and their advocates, including with the online police of them. See a bunch of punks telling everyone, oh, you're on drugs and things like that when they mention child abuse acts. They're not legitimately pretending such. They're not so overtly delusions wrought and have the audacity to pretend that someone else has a delusion. See that we have the interbranch with their family members putting fake things into courts, speaking fake things into records through time, as judges from various courts involved with the same houses, involved with drugs and medicines crimes and sexual crimes, with little kids that are timed roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. So fear guide to hide and plot. I'll rap a lot. Make sure that you guys don't hide this from Judge Napolitano. I'll play a game. And fix the news, WFSB. Fix the news and give me a response for the confessions of the principal child abuser and what I recorded. WTNH too, please fix the fake emails and get them to one name and paper on one name and sequence on paper now. Watch what the games I caught them doing with everyone around everyone. You fake punks. Watch. So get on paper now. You don't make people, in other words. Watch the violence because there's more violence. They know I caught them various ways recorded roles with poison crimes still and roles with the intelligence community, with fire departments, and with the intelligence community with boxing gyms, spreading lies about me with the judges and their family members and prosecutors and their family members and their intimate ties to each other since they were kids, with sexual circles, with a certain type of victim / hyper victim, pretending other kids to fake locations. Time when they're going to walk there so they can lie about what comes first. Then they had time uses of that as names involved with what is hyper-evidential, where and how we can appreciate names with all sides in criminal and civil cases leading up to the World Trade Center attack context. In that context, also with the Ninth Circuit Court right next to it, and since as names with connections made for them interstates. Also, they made uses of corners of streets near my house as the names involved on off Central Connecticut State University and Trinity College involved with predicate acts with fax methods. It's not just this campus, nothing personal against them. Every campus is a great campus. This is on off every campus. These are UConn names with the military, foreign, and domestic, with their training narratives. It takes a lot of time training. You guys, you need to get off get out of the databases, get these doctors with ones with badges on paper and to one name and sequence. And they're not going to hide behind, in other words, they never been American. We never had anyone speak for our side, every side. So what do you think about this? Well, those subject treatments are measured and used effectively to measure and maintain. People will speak for the word America. People will speak for the word China, but not to speak, not to use what's hyper, not if they're going to use what's hyper evidential. For example, where both of our countries, China and America, and Russian founders and Ukraine founders. Already the semi-ancients had been individually grouped and together uses of names, tactical terror, from how we are employed by nature. Answering our questions, but now with other in place of those answers. Things like not just like tactical delusions. These are tactically sabotaged sciences. They have uses of the words like bully and bullying, simultaneously multi-front, where conscious use /s of the identity of the sciences share is self-valued being having been obfuscated by the only type of victim /hyper-victim, pretending other nature of Trinity as identities volume allowed to be heard. Names uses. Predicate acts with facts roles, with your locations uses roles. Real sick as collusions at the campuses, right on off the homes of kids increasingly, and therefore of adults increasingly too, killing people, going around with guns and things. Oh, that's this, blaming on other things other than themselves, even when true. What is our founders told us to blame on the breaching method. It is inseparable from these things. So they have subject treatments to measure and maintain. Also, the identity of the value of what came first before the smallest finite detail is another identity of possession over each subject. And also the extent through what we know we don't know, while there's an extent we know about what future positive is. And how it shows us that is to appreciate its and every identity's, therefore, in conjunction to positive and negative simultaneously. So, please follow mandated law. WFSB, please fix the news. There are probation officers and roles with the people that had roles with that, where and how the locations are being used as collusions with relative murders and untimely deaths. So names on my street in Wethersfield, Connecticut, they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by people that have roles with names from other parts of the city. And from other parts of other towns and other parts of the city who were influenced to plant evidences and fake motivations and sequences on my street. This also brought up the principal child abusers campus and roles with untimely deaths, one on the campus of Trinity College and another one involved with time uses of a house /s associated with that through time too, where it has connections, where and how such was brought up to me. And these are also the names involved with wire crimes and social media planting evidences with judges and prosecutors and wire crime roles with the name Ray Cololo as people involved with various people associated with their extended family members associated with them, involved with judges speaking fake things in records, drugs and medicines crimes with little kids, crime roles, sexual and medical, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, names on off the locations of sensitivity, like next to banks, corners of streets, are used by them corners of buildings. They have roles of Wethersfield police confessing while they keep their mouth shut, while they're not giving me a name to respond to on paper. They have the roles through time with Afghans, kids, and the difference of them being male or female. That difference, they have roles on Wethersfield campuses with the intelligence community, criminally foreign influence, distinctly from on Rocky Hill campuses too, though. There was a guy, I don't know his name. I know his name. I never see it on paper. I never had a conversation with him. He was on a bus with me one time. That exception was in one of the things, and he's got one of the ones tied to, I think it's a Dave Santangelo. But I saw him at like an Italian themed event in Elm Park in Rocky Hill the other day, and he had a kid with him, and he has a sister who I don't know. I forgot. Oh, I don't know her name, but I don't want to say her name. I barely know her. One time, I sat next to her in a caf for like 5 minutes. And in other words, I never had a class with her in my life. There, and she asked me if she could borrow my Walkman. I had a Walkman. I don't have a Walkman. And she was just listening to the music. And she's a very pretty girl, but she has a husband. I assume they have kids because I didn't see her there. But her brother was there. But he's involved with people involved all along that street and all other Elm Street and Weathersfield with generals associated with teachers I had, with Eric Oliveri, who's been planting evidences between campuses and all along roads and routes like 175, with names on my street who have roles of wire crimes with Weathersfield Police and other police forms at the same time, and then again through time, as their roles with the hyper-evidential, wherein how they have roles with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, and then again through time, and names with the hallways of the courts. Mendez Police have roles with many names at New Britain Superior Court and tied to them and their family members who have roles of Weathersfield Police since they were kids, and the courts. And the difference of that, they have grouped predicate acts methods. The identities of the branches individually grouped and together. 3 ways kept criminally foreign influenced, self-value roles, each modern country's branches of government, and or the difference between the exceptions tied to them. So Sandy Hook campuses names and their family members and people associated with them, like with ones with the name O'Brien, ones with the name Cololo, further involved with predicate acts on my street since I was a kid, as ones that were involved with them planting evidences at other places I lived, because which goes with timed uses of the ground, locations consciously, and of motivations planting, also relative as the hyper-evidential is how they got away with this so through time so much, including how it is KKK black themed interbranch timed collusions with the murders and uses of that where they're switching and forging names into branch, Connecticut, as the ones who were timed roles on off the World Trade Center in Manhattan, New York, and on off the spots next to it. There are girls from Central Connecticut State University. I mean, and I don't know the name. In other words, and I mean, I'm at Trinity College. There are girls that are from Trinity College I don't know the names of, and there's one I don't want to use the name of. They do things like that to know where you're not going to say something, and they make something up into databases. This Joshua Stryker pretended I had verbal conversations with him. I never did. He non-verbally confirmed when I was a kid, and then again, he has roles with sequence shifts and planting evidences with a whole bunch of different natures of federal criminals, and some of them as co-defendants of a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, in a 2006 district court case. Leading up to that case, in that context, and since, they have been planting evidences with names in all sides of criminal and civil cases, and with names intercampuses through time. Has something to do with the roles with mayors that I never had conversations with, and people associated with them increasingly going out of their way preemptively to plant faked evidences. The name there's a name of retired mayors I don't even know the name of. A mayor I don't even know the name of, associated with Connecticut Education Building and houses next to it. And there's a John DeMoro who was involved with people all along Church Street and Weathersfield with medical corruption with kids. Doctors attaching kids to fake conversations with themselves, attaching their family members to fake conversations with themselves, changed conversations with themselves. I never had a conversation with a Dr. Gilmore. I don't know if he's, in other words, he's one of the ones recorded involved with Hartford Hospital, involved with child offenders, intercities, before they were proven leaders of the kids too. And with Christina Sioka, they have all kinds of drugs and medicines, delusions, crimes, and roles planting federal evidence as crimes, federal rules of evidence as crimes, and databases, criminally foreign influence uses of programs and states, systems, and natures as criminal insidiousness natures. I'm not even a lawyer. You're gonna have them follow mandated law, box C. Follow mandated law for Connecticut interbranch. I want a confession. I want a response for the confessions of the principal child abuser and for the confessions communicated by the Weathersfield police, forging and switching names, and wire crime acts and methods, and fake conversations, fake ties to me with these Mendez police. Also involved with West Hartford campuses. They have the difference between public and private campuses and fire campuses and medical campuses. Also, a whole bunch of people with the Institute of Living and with mental health places associated with emergency rooms. They have collusions with names and as names involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And they're demonstrating there's not legitimately, they're hiding the roles with criminal justice and unmarked police and training them on and off campuses. They have their acting coaches also involved with them intercities, planting on and off campuses fake motivations. Frankie Reese is also one of the ones by Weathersfield Police and other police forms demonstrated, recorded, confirmed, involved with them with news media and with planting evidences with child offenders at campuses intercity. So make sure you get the Weathersfield Police Chief Cintron too. He's involved with names with the Elm Streets in Weathersfield and Rocky Hill, planting evidences, identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake motivations for it, and fake ties. The nature of the ties to me and to his family members and intimate ties. There's a Jessica Cintron, a John Mayon, and others recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with him with Joe, people with the name Demoro. Also, there's a guy with the name Joe Cool on one of the Russians involved, recorded with lawyers of Weathersfield Police and FBI, planting evidences and fake motivations as collusions with other natures and relative, and with the attackers. These are people roles with the attackers. The World Trade Center had roles with trade, like with psychiatry's medications, while they've been faking conversations here and there, while they've been incapable of defending their delusions and their criminal foreign influence, fact-human nature, quality aspects in nature, and of affording discern free speech of integrity, while they need to pretend he's favorable. It's a follow mandated law for the interbranch, please. Fox News, CNN, please do what's right. CNN, you guys have sources on off Paul Manafort Drive where the intelligence community from Weathersfield into Branch is on off New Britain location, all sides of the campuses, intercities, like on off all sides of Central Connecticut State University. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with foreign and domestic military and interbranch family members leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context, and since also with the news where they use their roles with the press briefings. There was intelligence community involved with uses of a mirror where they could look into a classroom, who's one of the ones also involved with predicate acts with Hartford locations and unions, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and with the names of wire crimes on my street and narratives of my name through time, increasingly relative. These are also people, again, involved with child abuses at Sandy Hook and with a principal child abuser. I fear God to hide and plot and to keep sending punks to trained to pretend they could just speak for the law online, digital, etc. Get them on paper in one name and sequence and get out of the World Trade Center. Ah.